Hi, this is David Halen, and you are listening to Status Stranded Intro, Rain. I hope you enjoy. The smell of smoke was normal. I have known the aroma all my life. I don't think I had ever gotten a breath of real, fresh air once in my life. The horizon tonight was a glowing orange haze from the smoke of the earth. I messaged my father that I was coming by. I didn't say for what, but it was a special reason. As I was walking, I looked upwards into the sky to see spacecraft flying smoothly overhead. I guessed the condition of Earth wasn't so imminent of danger that we had to leave immediately. That's good, for now. My parents' house was just down the street now. Beyond the neighborhood were towering cities that were there in the midst of the smoke that rose from the earth. These cities could almost touch the sky with the heights they were at, miles tall, with their mountainous structures protruding from the ground. But sadly, none of it will last when the world effectively ends in some unknown amount of time. Years, decades, who knows? Despite the coming devastation, I was about to do something that would bring joy, and bring life one day. And this is why I was going to my parents, to tell them the good news. I was only a few feet from the front door when the ground started to shake. The tremor was enough to be noticeable as I walked, but it caused no structural damage to any of the houses. The shaking wasn't going to stop soon, so I let myself into my parents' house. I was greeted with the sight of Mother passed out on the couch, passed out from beer or drugs or whatever she could get her hands on tonight. Father was sitting on the armchair on the other side of the living room, reading a book by light of the fireplace. The ground began to shake a fraction more violently. Father looked up at me as I walked in. "Rain!" He welcomed me with a warm expression about himself and a hushed tone. He didn't want to awaken my blacked-out mother. "I saw your message," he told me. "What's the surprise you spoke about?" I smiled. I know my smile is my father's smile. "I've decided I'm going to propose to Allie tomorrow," I told him with hushed excitement. Father exclaimed, "Rain, this is wonderful." He stood up and hugged me, the top of his head barely over my shoulder. We separated and I glanced at Mother on the couch. Needles were on the floor next to her. Father sighed. "When do you plan to propose?" he asked me. "During the family get-together with our families," I told him. Father nodded. "Does she know? Who else knows?" "Most of her family knows, but she doesn't know a thing," I explained, as I, myself, glanced at drugged-out Mother. Father looked up at me. "Is this why Grace and Allie's mother planned the get-together to begin with?" I nodded. The ground still shook, but it felt softer. Father looked over at Mother as he spoke to me. "Rain, I'm happy for you. I'm exceedingly happy for you," he told me. He shook his head. "I just wish she..." Father gestured his head towards Mother. "We're in a better mental state to enjoy this news." I nodded. "I planned to do it either before she came or when she's in another room." Father nodded. "Good." He looked back at Mother, who had drool seeping out of her mouth. "Good." Father mouthed the word. "And," I started to say as Father looked back up at me, "I'm sorry I haven't been in touch recently." He shook his head. "It's not your fault. It's hers." The ground shook harder. I sighed. "I feel bad for not being relentless enough to deal with her so I could spend more time with you." He shook his head. "Again, not your fault." I finally asked the dreaded question. "How is she doing?" Father glanced at his wife for a second before both of us walked to the front porch. "She's terrible," he explained. I opened my mouth to speak, but Father spoke faster. "She almost killed a few kids that lived down the street," he told me. "Why?" I asked. "What did they do?" Father shook his head. "You know, it isn't what they did. he explained. It's all her. All what she thinks. Has anything changed since I was here last? I asked him. He shook his head. Her mentality of why raise kids when the world is going to end hasn't changed a bit. Other than that, kill count. My eyes narrowed and I was scared to ask, but I asked anyway. How many? 4 now. Damn, I said under my breath. The ground was shaking less violently now. Rain, I met his eyes. My eyes were his. Yes, father? Trepidation shook my father. It hurt to see him like this. Take a knife with you. Just in case, he told me. And I'll have a gun in the cabinet, loaded and off safety, he explained to me. My eyes widened. You want me to kill her if she does anything? Father shook his head slowly. If we wanted her dead, she would already be gone. I want you to be able to stop her if you need to. I nodded quickly in agreement. Don't kill her. Just stop her, Father sternly instructed me. Hopefully her military instincts have been impaired by the drugs and alcohol. Yeah. Father sighed and tried to smile a little. Can you show me the ring? I smiled as I shook my head. I would like for it to be a surprise for everyone when I propose. Father smiled a little bigger. Is that your excuse for not having the ring with you right now? I laughed a little at that. No. Father smiled. I can't wait to see it. The ground shaking lessened to barely noticeable now. After I visited my parents, I went home, or what I called home. There was a neighborhood filled with model homes that most of the public ignored because of how close it was to a fault line, and I live in one of those. I went through my door and did a quick walkthrough of my house to make sure no one had snuck inside. It had happened before, but it didn't happen tonight. I was alone. As I was walking through, I averted my eyes from the dried splatters of blood on the floor. I did my best to clean it up, but I hardly did a good job. That was the closest I had gotten to killing someone. I thought I could go all the way and finish them off, but I didn't have it in me to end his life. Maybe one day, if I'm left with no choice, I'll be able to do it. I just hope that day isn't tomorrow. I went to my bedroom. Lined up on the floor of my bedroom were framed pictures of Allie and I, as well as pictures of only Allie. She's beautiful. She's a few inches shorter than I am, and I'm 6'4". She's smaller than I am, but she could kick my ass if given reason to. She's got the most beautiful eyes, a rich teal. Reminds me of the old pictures of Earth from space before it started to die. Her face is soft with soft lines and curves, and it's all complemented with rose-red hair that doesn't quite go to her shoulders. She'll oftentimes wear her hair tight, close to the scalp braids, or curl it. Sweet, beautiful Alexandria. Allie. Maybe one day we'll leave this place and take our love beyond Earth's horizon. But now we're here on this dying world. The ground thundered with a resonating boom and cracks started to crawl up the wall, but my house still stood. The echo of the thundering ground reverberated across the city. I looked out the window and the cities in the distance swayed from the shaking ground. The ground's tremors started to fade as I pulled my shirt off to go to sleep. I lay down on the mattress in the middle of the floor. The moonlight shone through the window and illuminated the pictures that leaned against the wall, and I could see Allie's gorgeous, smiling face. I went to sleep with a smile on my face, knowing that tomorrow we will be engaged. I had found that I had lost the ability to dream anything new over the past few months. The only dream I have is one that I enjoy. Allie and I holding hands as we walked through a lush, green, grassy field. She in a dark, sea blue dress, and I in a red suit that was sharp beyond compare. Allie's smile is the last thing I see before I wake up in the morning. I don't have that dream all the time, but when I do, it makes me happy. I woke up to the sun reflecting off the glass that holds one of my pictures. It was sometime early in the morning. I put on another shirt and went to the kitchen. I had dried foods in the cabinets, and some of the alien races out there have been supplying some of us with water and even some food from planets that they own. The otherworldly food has a more bitter taste to me, but I won't complain. I'm being fed. After I had eaten whatever this was, I went to one of the bathrooms and hoped that today was the day the water was on. I was disappointed to see that today wasn't a water day. I sighed and went into another bedroom. This bedroom had my clothes and other tools inside, and there wasn't a place in the room that wasn't covered in either. I pulled on a dark blue jacket that had some weight to it. It was a button-up jacket as well, and it had a collar and pockets. I then took off the sweats that I had on to sleep and pulled on a pair of cargo khakis. One of the pockets would hold the ring and box, and the other pocket would hold a knife. I left home and started on my way to where the family get-together would be. Aunt Grace's clubhouse in the middle of town. Most everyone would be there at 10 in the morning, but I don't have a car. I'll be there later than everyone else. The morning, smoke-filled air was a strange welcome to the day, but it was a familiar welcome that I've come to be used to. The walk to the middle of town is filled with condemned roads that no one has the time or patience to fix. There are poor patch jobs made of concrete that fill in some of the cracks, but the larger cracks in the road were futile as far as repairing goes. There were political posters plastered on every other standing wall in town. Nothing local, because the local governments have dissolved. A bunch of famous political faces from around the world with the words, "Don't worry, we are talking about you," in bold letters below the portraits of the political leaders of the larger area around us. I passed some of the farmland as I walked to the get-together. It used to be farmland at least. Now it's a tent city for those whose homes were destroyed from Earth dying. Honestly, I'm surprised that the house I'm staying in hasn't collapsed yet. Maybe all of those homes are reinforced. There were a few restaurants open, and the few that were open aren't open at night, so the people who live in the restaurants can sleep more peacefully. There was a citizen's investigation at a street corner. It looked like one or a few people had been killed or seriously injured. A group of 3 or 4 people had taken the roles of investigators and security, because law enforcement has been directed to the more populous cities, leaving most of us to defend for ourselves. I looked up at one of the clocks around town. It read almost 11 in the morning. I was late for the get-together, but at least everyone is still there, I would hope. Well, I also hope that Mother decided not to show up to the get-together, but I'm already asking a lot today. The get-together was in front of me, and I had everything on me that I needed. I decided not to walk in the front doors, but instead through the back doors to where the kitchen was. I opened the door and the kitchen was empty of people. I quietly opened each cabinet to make sure Father kept his word about the gun. I found the gun. It was above the sink and to the right, and just like he said, it was fully loaded with 8 bullets, and the safety was off. I carefully put the gun back in the cabinet and joined the get-together in the other room. And the first person I saw was Mother. She could look at me in the eyes if she lowered her head a fraction. My heart skipped a beat. She looked terrible, but she at least attempted to be presentable by having her hair pulled back. Other than that, she just wore an army hoodie and gym shorts. I know Father and I hope that her military training has faded from her, but her physique suggests otherwise. She is built like a machine. Her hazel eyes glowered at me, and I nodded a short greeting towards her and walked a different direction. Father wasn't anywhere near Mother. He was in a completely different room of the clubhouse. I could feel the ground start to rumble softly, but I ignored it. I went up to Father, who was in a group with my brother, Hartman, who is like me, but not as tall, along with Aunt Grace and her son and daughter, Cameron and Ingrid. A smile grew on my face as my heart pounded in my chest. Hartman and Father looked up at the same time to see me. "Rain!" Hartman exclaimed with a smile when he saw me. I gave my brother a hug, then I hugged Father. "Is Allie here yet?" I asked them both. "Yes," Hartman exclaimed. "She's in the room you just came from," he pointed, as he told me. The direction he was pointing was the room I had just come from. I didn't move from where I stood, but I looked into the room for Allie. But the first person I saw was Mother shooting a death stare into my soul. I quickly looked away from Mother's glare. "Is she really in there?" I asked both Hartman and Father. Hartman nodded. "Shit," I swore under my breath. I took a few deep breaths before I started walking into the other room. I didn't dare make eye contact with Mother. And sure enough, there was Allie, standing against the fireplace with a drink in her hand. She was wearing a green and white skirt and jacket, and her hair braided into a small point under one of her ears. She smiled when she saw me walking towards her. "Rain!" she beamed as we walked towards each other. The crowd was sparse and few, but we still had to walk around some people to reach each other. We hugged and kissed each other on the cheeks. Allie laughed. "Are you okay?" she asked me. "You seem shaken." I held her closer. "Mother is here," I explained, "and her presence is intimidating." Allie hugged me tighter. "Yeah, she's a lot," she said softly in my ear. "Should we go into the other room?" "Yes, please," I said with no hesitation. We separated and joined hands as we walked into the other room. We joined Hartman and Father, and almost as if someone showed a cue card, we all moved to the part of the room that was farthest from the room Mother was in. Allie put her arm around me. "This is fun, but it isn't so much fun when playing keep away with Mother," she said to me with a light-hearted seriousness in her voice. I nodded as I looked out across the room, and all of my family members drinking whatever from their cups and eating snacks off their plates. Mother was nowhere in sight in front of me. I looked around the room, and I didn't see her at all. I looked over at Hartman and Father and gave them a look that communicated that I was wondering where she was. And Hartman mouthed the words, "Nowhere in sight." That was good enough closure for me, though I would have appreciated more. I turned towards Allie and held her hands in mine. My heart was thundering in my chest as I looked in her eyes and spoke. I tried to speak. I let out a short laugh to myself. I had something prepared to say, but I forgot what it was, I told Allie. She smiled. "Maybe it will come to you later," she told me sweetly. I shook my head. "No, that would break up the moment," I said as I went down to one knee. Allie's face bursted into an expression of unmatched joy that made me smile and beam from within my heart. I couldn't even get the words out as I took the little box from my pocket and opened it towards Allie. "Yes!" she exclaimed. Then I stood up and put the sterling silver ring on her ring finger. Its gem was a stunning gold color, her birthstone. Allie was tearing up as we pulled each other close for a kiss on the lips. "Oh, what the hell?" Mother's voice carried through the clubhouse. Allie and I separated and looked to where Mother's voice came from. "Please not be directed at us," I said under my breath repeatedly. I looked in the small crowd for Mother, and suddenly, she was in front of Allie and I. "What the fuck?" Mother yelled at us. "You're so fucking stupid." I reached my hand where my knife was, just in case I needed it. Father came up from behind her and tried to pull her away, but she turned and pushed him to the ground with little effort. "Fuck you too, John, for letting me give birth for such a hopeful shithead." Then she kicked him in the head as he was down, knocking him out. Allie held me closer. Mother looked over at us again and got up in our faces. "Our planet is dying, And what the fuck do you do? She spat out the words at us, and both Allie and I reeled from the force of her words. What are you going to do? Fuck and have a fucking kid? Mother almost roared the words. You would raise that child to die. Fucking die. Mother reached out to grab Ellie's arm and tried to pull the rein off, and Allie hit her in retaliation. Allie is a strong girl, but she's not much against Mother. Allie kicked Mother in the stomach multiple times, but with the awkward position of being pulled by Mother, she couldn't land a good enough hit effectively. I took the knife out of my pocket and pressed the button to extend the serrated blade. A 15-inch blade materialized out of the 6-inch handle. I remembered what Father said. Don't kill her. Stop her. I quickly stepped forward and slashed the knife across Mother's arm, sending a splat of blood to the ground and soaked into her hoodie. Mother shouted in pain. Shit! Mother let go of Allie and Allie ran to my side. Some of Mother's blood had gotten onto Allie's dress. Mother turned and stormed away into the other room. No one dared try to stop her as she strutted through the room and into the kitchen, muttering something under her breath. Allie hugged my side and leaned her head on my shoulder and was breathing hard, but she still managed to get out the words. My answer is still yes. I turned my head to kiss her on the top of her head. I then had a terrible memory of what was in the kitchen. Not just Mother, but the gun. I yelled at the top of my voice, "Everybody get out!" A few people listened. Hartman, Aunt Grace and her children included, and a few of Allie's family ran for the doors. One poor soul ran into the kitchen, and they were quickly shot in the chest and fell to the ground. That was one shot, and I didn't want to stay around for the other 7. Allie and I ran for the doors that everyone else was running to, and there was a human congestion as all of us tried to get through the door. Mother took 3 more shots into a crowd of people in the other room. 4 shots left. We weren't going to make it out the door before she comes into this room. Either Allie or I would be able to get out, but not both of us. We needed to figure something out to stop Mother. I turned to Allie. Quick, we're not going to get out in time. Allie looked around the room and pointed at a corner. Stand there. She won't be able to see us if we stand there. I nodded and we bolted to the corner of the room. It was right next to the entrance of the room we were in. We were at an angle where we would see Mother before she would be able to see us. Are we going to kill her? Allie asked me in a hushed voice. No, Father said stop her, not kill her. I answered, okay. I know you've killed before, but I just want her knocked out, I explained to Allie. Gotcha. Mother was still in the other room as we waited for her to come around the corner. I could see Father stir in the room that we were in. His groan was an agonizing sound to hear. He tried to sit up and looked around. Where is everyone? Mother stepped into the room and fired a shot. As soon as we saw her, we jumped her. Allie drop-kicked her in the side, making Mother teeter on her feet. I came in after Allie's kick and slashed my knife across the hand that Mother was holding the gun, sending another spray of blood to the ground, and more blood sprayed onto Mother's hoodie and bare skin. Another gunshot came from the sudden attack against her out of reflex. Mother tried to switch the gun to her other hand, but I shoulder-checked her into a table. But she kept her footing and shoulder-checked me back, knocking me onto my ass. Another gunshot was let out from the jerking motions of the interaction. Mother pointed the gun at me and Allie jumped out in front of the barrel. No! Allie shouted as she jumped. Mother shot the gun and the bullet hit Allie in the stomach. A bright spark of light came from Allie, and this wasn't because of the muzzle flash. Allie dropped to the ground, holding her stomach, and the blood bleeding from her glowed a shimmering gold color. Mother looked down at both of us. I didn't know you were dating a fucking alien. I stood up and faced Mother. She isn't. Mother pointed the gun at me and pulled the trigger. and the gun made a clicking sound. The gun was empty. She looked at the gun in confusion, and I took the opportunity to attack her. I launched a punch into her chest as she was breathing out, making her stumble backwards. I kicked her in the stomach as hard as I could, and with that, she dropped the gun. I reached down to pick up the gun and held the muzzle as I swung the gun to hit her in the side of the head, over and over again until she collapsed on the ground, knocked out. I threw the gun at Mother and it hit her in the chest and then clattered to the floor. "Rain?" Allie said weakly. I turned around and dropped to the ground to Allie. Her stomach was shimmering gold from her blood. I took off my jacket and pressed it onto her stomach to stop the bleeding. Allie was taking long breaths and wincing in pain. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll live." I nodded as I kept pressure on her stomach. Her shining blood was starting to soak into my jacket. I took out my phone and called the local citizen authorities to come and assist. They answered the phone on the first ring. "What's your emergency?" a man's voice asked. "An incident at the finest clubhouse in Eastern Mediterranean," I explained quickly. "Bring officers and doctors. People have been shot, but the shooter is knocked out for now." "Yes, sir, right away." Then the man hung up. I put my phone down and asserted my focus back to Allie. "How long until you're okay?" She took a few deep breaths before answering. "I've never been shot before, so I don't know." She was starting to shake with tremors, and this shaking had nothing to do with the ground. "How do you feel right now?" I asked her. She looked down at her stomach. I think my skin is starting to mend itself now," she told me with a quiver to her voice. It feels like it will be." She grunted through the pain. She caught her breath again before she continued. "An hour or two." "You're okay?" I asked Allie. She nodded. "Yeah, check on everyone else," Allie told me with a far-off look in her eyes. I slowly took my golden blood-soaked jacket off Allie. Her blood made the back and some of the sleeves of my jacket glow that shimmering gold color that comes from her blood. I stood up and could feel the ground start to shake below me. I looked over at where Father lay. He was laying in a pool of his blood, with a bleeding hole at the base of his neck. Dead. I dropped to my knees and cried at the sight of Father. I couldn't bear to look at him, and I couldn't bear to look at Mother either. Why? The mound of resentment against Mother grew until a hill of anger in my heart, and I grit my teeth with fuming emotions running through my head. "Rain!" I jumped when someone called my name. A woman. "Come quick! Your brother!" I stood up faster than when I dropped to my knees. No, 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 no! Not Hartman. I turned around and ran towards where the voice called me. Before I even reached the woman who called me, I saw Allie's mother laying dead on the ground, surrounded by her crimson blood, with a chunk shot out of her head, and flakes of her brain scattered across the floor. Her eyes were still open post-mortem. I averted my eyes from the grotesque display. Allie's father was sitting up against the wall, trying to keep his own deep red blood from leaving his shoulder, but he had help. "Rain, over here!" the woman called. It was Ingrid who was calling me. She had tears in her eyes as she knelt over Hartman's dead body. Hartman's face was half destroyed by the bullet. The bullet impact left none of his left cheekbone intact as it passed through his head. I couldn't look at my brother like that. I was surrounded by death, and I wanted to celebrate my next step in life. I covered my face with my hands, and the tears soaked in my hands. The sound of aircraft engines came closer to the clubhouse. I turned and went back to Allie. She was still on the ground with her hands over her stomach, and her blood glowing and shimmering as it soaked into her clothes and drenched on her hands. 4 medical craft landed close to the clubhouse, and 2 citizens of law enforcement craft landed just behind the medical craft, and the people the craft carried stepped out onto the dirt below. Allie looked up with pain and hopefulness in her eyes. She was reaching out to me as her hands were covering the wound on her stomach. I crouched down to sit behind her and reached around her so I could put my hands on her hands, applying pressure to the wound on her stomach. I rested my hand in the space of her neck between her shoulder and her ear. I closed my eyes, and the darkness behind my eyelids was tainted with the death that surrounded me. I opened my eyes, and more tears fell off my face onto Ellie's shoulder. She turned her head, and her beautiful eyes took on a new burden of pain as she saw my tears and distress. She reached up and put her glistening, blood-soaked hand on my cheek, and leaned her face into mine, and closed her eyes and softly said, "I know." Hi, this is David Halen, and you just finished listening to Intro Rain from my story, Status Stranded. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week.